I'm Dana Denha, and you're watching FYI. Ann Arbor's Bicentennial has been the toast of 2024, with the city and organizations throughout honoring A2 and its 200th year. The Ann Arbor Summer Festival, or A2SF, worked with the AADL to bring living history to Wheeler Park.
We are all here for monuments here in Wheeler Park.
This is a project where I project video portraits of members of this community.
And this is a unique way to honor some people who have really enhanced and brought new possibilities to our community through their actions. So we're honoring tonight Bonnie Billups Jr., who is director of the Peace Neighborhood Center, Joyce Hunter, who is director of the African American Cultural and Historical Museum, and Keith Orr and Martin Contreras, who are the founders of the Arbor and community activists.
What I'm doing is providing an alternative to what we might understand as monuments, which are usually sculptural. The project is questioning or providing some alternatives to those ideas around how we present monuments in public space and how our civic spaces operate to tell stories about a place.
There's plenty of history right here in this block, right here in this neighborhood, and it's great that we were able to bring these community leaders and put them on display in this special place.
There's some synergy that takes place with this work. The portrait seems to sit and is comfortable and sort of coherent with the tree.
Stay tuned, and we'll be back with more in exactly 30 seconds. The city is home to more than 160 must-see parks, with scenic views, places to play, and some top-notch facilities. See all that Fuller Park has during this Park Peek.
Fuller Park is a 60-acre recreation area located on Fuller Road and Maiden Lane in the center of Ann Arbor. The park is also home to Fuller Park Pool. The pool is an outdoor 50-meter pool with a water slide. There are public restrooms and a water fountain near the pool entrance for park visitors. The park contains 5 athletic fields. 4 are behind the pool, and 1 field is west of the dirt parking lot. The play area was designed and built by the community and is one of the largest in the city. An accessible asphalt path connects to the play area and pool facilities. There are picnic tables and benches located near the play area, and parking built at the park and across Fuller Road. The park is part of the trail network connecting it to Island Park and Cedar Bend Nature Area. Be sure to explore a lesser-known trail that travels between the Huron River and the athletic fields. There is a pedestrian bridge connection to Island Park. You can also access the Border to Border Trail, which runs through the park. The park is home to the Give 365 volunteer program, which facilitates volunteer activities in the Ann Arbor Park system. For more information about Fuller Park or other city parks, visit a2gov.org/parks.
School bells are ringing, and the roads and walkways are much busier as students flood through the hallways and get back into the groove of learning. Get back to school safety tips in this month's City Roundup.
Hi, I'm Sergeant Mark Pulford with the Ann Arbor Police Department. Today we want to share with you 4 safety tips for the upcoming school year. The first one is always stop. So if you're approaching a stop sign or a traffic signal, make sure you stop in advance of the crosswalk because chances are there's going to be people crossing there. The second one is stay alert. Distracted driving kills, and one of the worst ways or worst forms of distracted driving is texting and driving. So put the phone down and keep your eyes on the roadway. The third one is to keep your distance. There'll be a lot of school buses on the road. If you see a school bus with the lights on or the arm down, you are required to stop. You have to stop 20 feet away from the school bus, and that includes both directions. The only exception is if it's a divided highway. The fourth one is to be patient. With the new school year, people are rushed, people are getting used to the routines, so we recommend the night before school, set out clothing and lunches, anything that you may need the following day to make your morning a little smoother and the commute a little less stressful. We hope that you have a great school year and be safe.
With the hustle and bustle of the fall, it's imperative to be aware of your surroundings when operating a motor vehicle, especially with kids traveling to and from school. Buses are a major mode of transportation for many students, and we need to know the laws where they line up with buses. Joining me is Tom James, attorney at Michigan Auto Law. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thanks so much, and thanks for having me today.
You know, I think that there's ebbs and flows throughout the year with driving, and you see different things depending on the time of year. Summer, you might see more cars on the road because people are off of school, and then the fall is when these buses come into play. What are some common issues that you notice once the school year starts flowing?
Perfect. Thanks, and thanks for the intro. So the things that we notice when the school buses come around and we have the beginning of the year is that we have a lot of our clients asking us questions like things like, when do I stop, right? The flashing lights confuse me, the yellow, the red, or I have divided highways. When do I need to stop? When I'm approaching a school bus from behind, that's kind of an easier one. But what if I'm coming up to a school bus, like, at an opposite direction? When do I need to stop there? Or, what's the stopping distance? We get a lot of those questions from a lot of our clients. And in fact, a lot of people who are just calling in to ask questions of our law firm.
One thing when I was thinking about this interview beforehand is, do you find a lot of the same things go on with city buses as they do with school buses? I know city buses don't necessarily have that stop arm, but I would think that a lot of the same rules would sort of come into play with a city bus.
Well, certainly the issues with being cautious.
Yeah.
That'll apply to muni buses as well as school buses, or even, the large traveling buses that we see that go interstate. And so the things that you want to look out for, and the reason why you want to look out for these whenever there's a bus around, is because buses involve mass transportation, right? And that's how we classify these things. They're mass transportation because there's a number of people on the bus. So once that bus stops, whether it's a muni bus or a school bus, you have to be concerned about pedestrians. Right. And whether it's city buses, we expect more adults. School buses, we expect children. And so with regards to the children and the school buses, you got to really be extra careful because adults tend to know better. Most adults tend to know better, and they won't just walk into the street or dart out into the street. But unfortunately, some kids don't know, right? And you have kindergartners that are getting off school buses. And so there really has to be a heightened awareness when you're around any type of bus.
Yeah, I noticed that, one of the laws that we abide by here is that if you are exiting a city bus, that you should cross the street behind the bus and not in front of the bus. And this is actually, I was thinking about this. Is this something that they tell students of school buses? And I've also noticed, because it's the beginning of the University of Michigan school year too, and I think you have more people on buses in general, city buses, school buses, that maybe haven't been busers in the past. And I noticed more people at the beginning of the school year cross the street at the front of the bus, and you can't see them when you're in a car behind the bus.
Yeah, there's not technically a law as it relates to that, crossing in front or crossing behind, but I believe it's based upon who the passengers are. And that's the way I've always looked at it and the way that I've kind of broken it down. So again, when we're getting to muni buses tend to be much shorter stops, right? They're on
Hmm.
a schedule and you better make it to that next stop on time or otherwise the bus driver gets in trouble. So the muni bus will make a stop, make it very brief. Everyone loads out, and then the bus takes off. Then people cross the road. So you generally see those muni buses and people crossing behind them. But school buses are a completely different monster, right? And
Yeah.
different animal. The school bus will not leave. They will not turn off their blinking or flashing red lights, and they will not lower that stop arm until the kids are in a safe area. So, in order for the school bus or the school bus driver to determine whether or not someone's in a safe area, they need to be able to see those children crossing. And so it's best if they go in front of the school bus in that regard.
Well, that's good to know because I feel like I'm always paranoid when I'm behind a school bus that I'm like, are there going to be kids crossing the road after the bus leaves? I just want to make sure that the kids are where they need to be. So you're telling me that it's essentially the bus driver is making them safe before they would even allow a car to pass that bus.
They should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So when we first started talking, you mentioned sort of an all-encompassing situation where you're like, how people wonder about this, that, and this. So when we are behind a school bus, what is that first indication that we need to be aware that they're going to stop?
Ooh, very good question. So I would say just by being behind a school bus in a residential area, you should already have heightened awareness. And so school buses do stop at areas that we don't expect them to stop. There isn't a bus stop like we'll see with Muni. So it could just be at this corner. It could be at the next corner. It could literally be at someone's house or for a one-stop shop type of thing. So if you are behind a school bus, anywhere behind them, give them extra space. Give them extra cushion. We learn a lot of things in driver's training. You hear about the 3 second rule, things like that, 3 to 5 second rule. Well, err on the 5 second side of things. Now, what should happen is at the point where a bus is coming up or a school bus is coming up to their stop, they should put on their yellow flashers.
Hmm.
And so, and we all see those. They have the big lights that are really high up. And so those yellow flashers mean there is a stop coming up. This is not a sign to pass, right? I mean, I know that sounds obvious, but I see it all the time, right? Yellow goes up. I don't want to get stuck behind that bus. They race around them. Please don't do that, right? Please slow down. Give them extra space, understanding that there could be a stop at any time.
So then that is your first caution. You're like, okay, this bus is about to stop. You see those flashing lights at the top of the bus. So then the stop arm comes out, which it means you are stopping. So you're staying stopped the entire time this bus has this arm out, and the arm is like flashing and stuff too, right? It's got a light on it. So you're well aware. So once that happens, how far away are you supposed to be from this bus?
Ooh, very good question as well. You have some great questions. And so, with regards to that stop arm, not all buses have that stop arm, but all buses do have flashing red lights. And so, you know that when you see those alternating flashing red lights, that this bus is coming to a stop. If it has a stop arm, that'll come up as well. And exactly like you said, that has its own lights to alert you. So when that comes up, thankfully, we've given them that extra cushion that we just discussed, and you can stop behind that school bus at no less than 20 feet away. It has to be a 20-foot cushion. That is the law.
And maybe more if you want to be extra safe.
Absolutely. And part of what that cushion is supposed to provide you with, not only are you giving a little bit of a buffer to let the school bus driver know they don't have to worry about you, but that buffer allows you to see more, right? It gives you a better perspective on what's going on. I know we talked earlier about, yep, the kids might be, crossing in front, but maybe this is one of those times where the kids cross behind. Because you never know, right? The kids are in a hurry. They come out, they have their lunch, they're running home.
They might see their
Um,
parent on the other side of the street and just not. I mean, I know I have kids. I see how, like, I worry about crossing the street in general, with or without a bus, you know?
Exactly. I got three of them. And
Yeah.
so, 3 kids. And so this is always a concern of mine, but you're absolutely right, right? If the law says 20 feet, I think you should give them a little more cushion. Give them 30 feet. Now you can see more. Now you can plan more and everyone can be safer.
So you mentioned obviously if that stop arm's out, you're not passing this bus. But there is one scenario where you could potentially pass a bus, but there has to be a median in the middle.
Well, I guess let me reframe that a little bit.
Yeah, yes,
Um,
please.
So if you're going in the same direction as the bus, so you're stopped behind them, that's where we have to give them the 20-foot cushion. When that arm comes out, you have to stop. You don't have any options. Those lights are flashing. You're going in the same direction. You are always stopping behind that bus. Now, the passing exception kind of comes into play when you're on the other side of the road, you're oncoming traffic to the bus. And this is where we get a lot of questions because it's like, well, when do I stop? Do I have to stop in a, one lane in each direction and that bus stops? Well, absolutely, right? In a 2-lane road,
Yeah.
if you're oncoming traffic, you always have to stop. Now, if there's 2 lanes going in each direction and I'm coming up to the bus that stopped and it has the lights and the stop bar out, do both lanes have to stop? Absolutely. Both lanes have to stop. So, and here's a third one where all cars have to stop. Let's say it's 2 lanes in each direction and they have a center turn lane. So we see this all the time, right?
Mhm.
Really good for traffic. So now, if that's the case, well, there's a paved center lane that separates the 2 lanes of travel. Well, do I have to stop in that case? Well, guess what? Absolutely. And in fact, that's the way the law is written. If there is a paved road or a paved lane in between the two opposing lanes of travel, you have to stop. So the exception is when you're traveling in the opposite direction and there's some sort of barrier between the lanes. Now, that barrier can be a grass barrier. So we see that with those Michigan lefts. They have
Yep.
large grass barriers, so you can keep going. And also, if there's a concrete divider, if there's a concrete divider between the 2 lanes, then in that case, the opposite lane can continue on.
Do they have to stop at all?
No, they don't
Okay.
have to stop at
Because I
all.
can tell you in my recollection, I can think about this happening to me and being like, I don't know what to do, you know?
Yeah. Well, there's pressure behind you, right? There's cars coming up behind you.
Yeah.
They're in a hurry. They might not know the law, so they're laying on the horn, and so you have anxiety coming up to these school bus stops. But when in doubt, I always think the safest thing is to stay on the right side as much as possible. But do remember, right? Do remember the law. There has to be a barrier of some sort, whether it's a grass barrier or a physical barrier, for you not to stop.
And not just a middle lane. A middle lane means you're stopping.
That's right. A middle lane means you're stopping.
And so I didn't actually realize this but it makes complete sense until I was like doing a little research for this. But I didn't realize that some buses actually have cameras on them. So what happens if you violate one of these laws and the camera catches you?
Yeah, yeah. So, a lot of people probably learn this when they watch the news and they see, all of a sudden there's this, we can't believe that this happened, right? And it's someone passing a school bus, dangerously. How did they get caught? Well, you're absolutely right. That stop arm that comes out, a lot of those have cameras on them. And they're not, these cheap grainy cameras that you have. These are cameras that are pretty high def and can get a license plate from about 200 feet away. And if you pass one of these school buses and they have that camera, they will report that to law enforcement. Law enforcement will then go after the owner of the vehicle, right? The registrant of that vehicle. And there's some pretty severe penalties, right? If you don't stop at all, let's just say you decide to run it and, thank goodness, knock on wood, no one gets hurt. Well, that's still a civil infraction, like a speeding ticket. The fines for that are anywhere from $100 to $500, depending upon the severity and what gets tacked on by the judge. Now, if it happens in a school zone, you do that same action in a school zone and get caught, well, it doubles the fines. Now, unfortunately, if there's an injury, right? So now the penalties get much more severe if there's an injury. And even if there's a minor injury that's caused, that's a misdemeanor. You get fines up to $1,000. A misdemeanor is potentially a year in jail. If you kill somebody during this act, well, that's a felony. And we're talking about fines of anywhere from like 7,500 and possibly prison for 15 years. And then obviously you have to live with the fact that just because you were in a hurry, you killed somebody in that whole process. So the fines are pretty steep. The fines are pretty steep.
I was also curious while I have you, I mean, obviously we're talking about school buses and schools, but what about I know years ago Ann Arbor sort of adopted that you have to stop for a pedestrian in the crosswalk. Is that true for the whole state now that you have to stop for a pedestrian in a crosswalk?
Um, well, you should. You should always stop for a pedestrian in a crosswalk. And thankfully, what Ann Arbor does, that not of a lot of other communities do, is they'll put up the crosswalks in areas that you wouldn't have normally found them 30 years ago or
Hmm.
40 years ago. You know, I usually drive and go play hockey every Sunday, and on my way to hockey, I'm going, I play in Ann Arbor, and I go through a number of these where it's just these residential communities that are kind of out in the nowhere, and then all of a sudden there is a crosswalk, and you hit the button, it brings up all the flashing lights, gives you an alert, and so in those regards, you absolutely have to stop for those things. But but right, I wish all the other communities were like Ann Arbor in how aggressive they are. Maybe aggressive is the wrong word, but how attentive they are. And
Proactive.
yeah, proactive, attentive, and protecting all of their citizens.
Well, I will say this is actually one of my biggest pet peeves is when one of those crosswalks with the flashing lights is there and someone doesn't press the button. It drives me insane. I'm like, it's just your safety. If I see those flashing lights, I know there's somebody there. But sometimes if you are crossing there and you're not pressing the light, I don't necessarily see you until you're out in the road sometimes, depending on how the traffic is flowing. So I will just say, from my own experience, please press those buttons. Please. They're there for a reason.
Well, psychologically too, what it does for a driver, right? And if you're driving on a roadway and you see, 100 yards ahead that there's one of those crosswalks with the light, then you automatically attune yourself to think, I don't have to worry unless I see those lights flash.
Hmm.
And I know you're supposed to, right? But
Yeah.
it's those unconscious things that you do to yourself. And then if you don't hit that light, right, you are potentially creating more danger for yourself as a pedestrian by walking in a crosswalk where you should have hit the light. Yeah, I know it. It sounds weird, but it's just the way that our brains are kind of wired.
Well, and I do find like I have family that lives about an hour from here and they just started getting like they have like one of those lights. My parents go for walks every day and they cross a busy road, but they won't press the button. They wait until it's absolutely clear and then they cross. And I'm like, just press the button, please. Even if it's clear, press the button because someone could come out of nowhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a good habit, right? It's
Yeah.
one of those things where, and it's like everything else. You develop the good habits and then it becomes subconscious. And then you're safer that point forward from, until you no longer take walks anymore.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the crosswalk walk aspect because, my kids aren't bussers. I pick them up. I pick my daughter up from school. My son's too young to go to school. But I like to know that, like, in Ann Arbor, we stop. Most people stop regardless if there's a flashing. If they see the crosswalk lines, you and someone's approaching, you stop and let them go. So I just always like to feel like everyone's doing that, which they, for the most part in this area, they do. Like you can cross the street at the school, and if there's a car that's like a little ways away, you can feel comfortable getting into that crosswalk without feeling like they're going to have to slam on their brakes. But I do like to mention the crosswalk aspect because not everyone's a busser. And it's all about sharing your roads. Like in Ann Arbor, when the school day is starting or ending, you're seeing more pedestrians. You're seeing a lot of people on bikes too. So you have to be aware of the bikers and stuff and the buses. So it just is a lot. It's a lot more that you have to just keep your head on a swivel while you're actually driving at those times.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we do have good laws that punish distracted driving, but it doesn't stop distracted driving,
No, it
right?
does not.
And so, at any given time when you're driving into work, you can look to your left, that person's holding their phone, looking at something. You look to your right, that person's watching YouTube videos or something. And so Yeah, absolutely. The drivers need to stop the distracted driving, but also as a pedestrian, right? We need to be aware that even though we have these laws for distracted driving, that there is a certain amount of accountability that we have to
Oh,
protect.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many times I've been in my car and been like, get off your phone. Like that is like just I can tell when someone's on their phone even if I can't see it because they're not going at a green light or they're just doing weird stuff while they're driving. So yes. But other than that, I mean, before we go, do you have any other advice you would give people while navigating during the school rush?
I would go back to kind of where I started, which is just heightened awareness.
Hmm.
As soon as you see that school bus anywhere, right? It's oncoming, it's in front of you. Increase your awareness, think about it, give them a little more space, give them some time. Nothing is worth the extra 10 seconds you save by running, by screeching around a school bus. And really, that's it. It might save you 10 seconds, and that's not worth taking someone's life over.
No, you don't want to take someone's kids from them. I mean,
Mm,
think of it that way. You would be taking someone's children from them if you did something terrible.
It's awful, right?
Well, thank you, Tom, for filling us in on these laws and enlightening me on some of them because I wasn't really sure about like the full spectrum of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyone's welcome to give me a call. Give us a call if you have any questions. And you're always welcome to call me as well.
Okay, well, you have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
For more on this and other programs, visit a2gov.org/CTN. Visit youtube.com/CTN Ann Arbor to see all that we have to offer. And remember to like, subscribe, and ring that notification. Thanks for watching and tune in next time to FYI.